Hello, my friends. How you doing? How's 2026 treating you? How did you start? I think I'm very optimistic about 2026, although I'm so disappointed by the world wars, the exasperated problems of human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1896, as you know, the Battle of ADWA took place when Italians from their territory, Eritrea, tried to advance down south to Ethiopia to colonize it, and they suffered one of the worst defeats that history can remember. The Ethiopians defeated the Italians convincingly, but were they the only actors? Was the story told fully? We heard about the victory of the Adwa Battle of Adwa, but have we ever heard about the shame associated with the battle, ladies and gentlemen? A very interesting story has been disguised from people from the world, because anytime we talk about the Battle of Adwa, we only talk about the victory. We don't talk about what happened exactly at that time to human beings, especially to black people. Adwa is supposed to be it's supposed to be the pride of black people, but can we consider it to be the shame of black people at the same time? Let's say, today we're going to discuss a few things. Have you ever heard anything about the contribution of Eritrean heroes to the defeat of Italians in Adwa? I don't think so. Have you ever heard about the composition of the Italian army in the Battle of Adwa and what happened to the prisoners of war? Do you have full detail about it? We're going to discuss it today. You ever heard about the involvement of forced Eritrean Askaris fighting the Ethiopians at the Battle of Adwa? Probably you did. I don't know, but do you know what happened to them? By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Askaris were Africans all over Africa that had to work for their colonizers in terms of protecting the colonizers. The colonizers came to Africa after 1884 and depended on the native Africans to defend themselves and their empires. So, the same thing was in Eritrea. The Italians colonized Eritrea, and of course, they had their own Askaris, like the Britons had Sudanese Askaris, like the French had Algerian Askaris. The Italians also had Eritrean Askaris. So when the fighting was going on in 1896, Eritrea was already independent since 1890. Therefore, Imperial Italia advanced to Ethiopia with its army comprising the Askaris, the forced Askaris. The Askaris were forced into the fight because they were colonized. They were second-class citizens. They were actually almost like slaves. Apartheid was going on in Eritrea, so they were forcing them to fight their death. All colonizers fought their death through the Askaris in Africa, ladies and gentlemen. But Adwa, what happened was the Italians came and they were defeated, definitely. It doesn't mean all Africans were not fighting in different parts of Africa against colonialism, ladies and gentlemen, but this was the major fighting that took place. And then Ethiopians succeeded, and this signified the pride of African people in general. But do you know something that shames black people took place at that time? I'm going to let you know. But first, I'd like to share this video because I agree in certain areas. Okay, at least who was leading the Adwa, a government level of connection. Probably we get something from this brother. And then I will continue with my thesis.
I was going to be traitorous to the struggle. What matters is that the core of the leadership, in particular, we have to shout out Tigray and Showa coming together. Raspen Gasha, Rasa Lula, putting down.
Okay, the first two were Tigrayans. ADWA is located within the region of Tigray, and Ras Alula was the general of that government.
Their differences and coming to Menelik II.
And then, of course, Menelik II was leading Ethiopia at that time. So these three powers are responsible for what happened. For the pride and shame of the battle, that's all I want to show you from this video. My dear listeners, let me give you a little idea, a brief idea that you can get by Googling. Brief idea, in 1996, the war took place. It was estimated about 25,000 army, Italian army, probably were participated, among which 14,500 to about 17,700 Ethiopian army. Italian army participated in that fight. Seemingly, in approximately 6,000 Eritrean askaris were added to this group. The Italian command was led by General Oresta Baratieri. And then the war was lost. There were many prisoners of war, among which 2,000 Eritreans were actually killed, and then 800 of them were captured out of the 6,000 Eritrean participants, I think. Well, history says that about 2,000 of them were killed and 800 were captured. Let's say German, they were captured as prisoners of war. But what happened? We know the Italians were captured too. They were captured also. Believe it or not, the leaders of the war, the Ethiopian leaders responsible for winning the war, released the Italian prisoners of war completely free. They released them. Well, they respected the international regulations by the United Nations at that time. I don't think there was the United Nations whatever, but there could be some kind of international order. Anyway, the Italian prisoners of war were all released. The Italian prisoners of war were released, let's say, German, by the authorities. But what happened to the Eritreans? About 800 of them, if not more, was one of the most brutal experiences mankind passed in the history of mankind's actuality. Let's say German. This story has not been told. The Italian prisoners of war were released, but to the Italians, it was good. To the Italians, it was very good. But at the same time, it was bad because they had the askaris left over for special selective treatment as traitors. Let me show you what happened. These are witnesses, all people, remnants. Probably this guy was a kid at that time talking about his parents, but this is what happened, ladies and gentlemen. Check this out. To the Eritreans, they cut the right hand up to this and the left leg also, without anesthesia, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what kind of weapons they use. No anesthesia here. And the victims were alive. They were dismembering them alive, 800 of them, and this is the picture. This is one of the pictures taken at that time by the Italians. Can you imagine? About 800 of the Eritrean askaris were murdered. Some of them were murdered, but at least 800 of them were dismembered as such, and the man is witnessing to that effect, ladies and gentlemen. Man is talking about the man of suffering. His elders, his parents suffered in this extremely brutal experience where selective punishment was done against the Eritrean people without anesthesia.
ተአምራት እንታይ ኣሎ
And these are a few of the
እዚ
pictures I want to
ኣብ
show you.
ዓለም
I don't have to tell you about what the guy is talking about. The pictures tell you exactly what they were about. So check this out. This is what exactly happened. You see? As you can see, there are some Italians with them. The Italians came back and helped these poor people and took the remnants, the ones who were found alive, who were not eaten by animals out there in the field. They brought them to Africa, to Eritrea, which is Italian colony at that time. Look at these pictures. Well, the two elders witnessed to this effect, of course. Check this out. I'm going to take you to the witness one more time and see what they're saying. Obviously, he's talking about the way they cut them was so brutal. They were putting the hands over a big tree on the ground, and they just chop it up. They did the same thing to the legs also. And this history is still around, and let me hear this man if he's talking about.
ናቶም በይወይ እያም ሊበራስ ዘድዎም ነዞም ሓበሻኸ ሓደ እግሮምን ሓደ ኢዶምን ቆረፅዎም ተባሂሉ ይቁረፁ እዮም ጋሮም
You see, decision was taken already to this effect. See? Decision was taken to this effect. Let the Italian prisoners of war be released, but the Eritrean askars be dismembered. Responsibility goes to the three leaders, my understanding, and knowledge goes to you. Knowledge goes to you, but I have something more to discuss. These are the three leaders accountable for the damage, not only to the Eritrean askars, but to the entire Black community around the world. The story has not been told. The story was all about their glamorous victories in ADWA, but not the shame. And then that glamorous victory dignified the Black people all over the world, ladies and gentlemen. It dignified all Africans, so to say. But that shame was not included in the story, so that's why I'm telling you. For these leaders to do that, what exactly was going on in their minds? The satanic forces of Black pride and shame, ladies and gentlemen. Black people could have been, even Africans could have been proud of the experience. Proud. I'm not saying dignified, but proud. Proud. You're talking about pride. You have to compare somebody with something else. And then you will be proud because you beat the other person in that competitive entity. To be dignified, you don't have to compare yourself. You can be dignified. But the ADWA battle has become the pride of Ethiopians, and then especially Ethiopians, but also of Black people in general, for ages. Have you Black people heard this story? Do you know that white people were selectively sent home while the poor Eritreans were cut? How do you see this? Are you proud of this experience? Well, I got a few questions to ask. Dear listeners, the fact that Ethiopians overly exaggerate their achievement in the Battle of ADWA in comparison to other Blacks and suggesting they are probably the most patriotic, the most organized human beings with this kind of historical significance. But how does the history of ADWA suggest, how does it support the 3,000 years of liberation, of free nation, liberation, a free nation, a liberated nation, Ethiopia for 3,000 years? How does this contradiction go with that? Was Ethiopia really, for that many years, surviving alone? This, I leave it for you. To my understanding, Ethiopia was created in 1896. 96, ladies and gentlemen, not 6 years after Eritrea was fully established. But do you think history can be told, of course, again and again, but the way it was exaggerated? The sole momentum of pride for Ethiopians, ADWA victory has always been a big deal in Ethiopia and in a lot of places. Could it be because Ethiopia has nothing else to show compared to its values and existence, to very fragmented Ethiopia of this time I'm talking about here and now? Okay, could it be that the Ethiopians have only that thing to be proud about, so they're clinging to it? They wouldn't let go. They cling to it. This is something that bothers me. Does Ethiopian pride, based on being the only nation to defeat white colonialism at that stage of colonialism, reflect its inferiority complex racially? Ethiopians' pride basically comes back from beating Italians in that battle, ladies and gentlemen, in that battle. Okay? So if their pride originates from the idea, from the narrative of beating the whites, in comparison to other Africans who couldn't accomplish such a victory at that time, the fact that comparing themselves with Italians and they beat them and they produce that pride, do you think Ethiopians had the tendency of thinking themselves racially inferior because beating the whites makes you so proud? As such, it gives you special kind of identity. This probably racially speaking, I'm talking about inferiority complex. Did the Ethiopians feel comfortable about themselves in comparison with the Italians? Did they consider themselves equals to them? If African pride is supposed to be judged on the basis of beating the white man, didn't all Africans beat the white man during the colonial years everywhere in Africa? Did Africans beat the whites everywhere? Did the whites left by themselves, or they lost wars everywhere? Although Ethiopia started it. So if this makes Ethiopians pride, if this gives them a special, a distinct place in history, in African history, in terms of, I'm talking about complexion. So would this insistence mean that Ethiopia's pride came only from this area because they consider the white man better than them? Can I say that? So brutality, ladies and gentlemen, demonstrate the brutal, I don't know whether it's traditional or cultural, I don't understand. Ethiopia right now finds itself divided into about 12 liberation movements, everybody trying to run away from that fascist 3,000 history. Nobody accepts it anyway. Needless to say, the Battle of ADWA has 3 stories to be told about. The version of the Tigrayans excludes Menelik, okay? And the version of the Amharas, the Amharic version, excludes the Tigrayans basically. And then now comes the Oromia. This Abiy regime came to dismiss both of them and writing a different story about the ADWA. But all of them forgot the story of these amputations. All of them forgot their shame intentionally. They're hiding it from the world. You can't have the cake and in it too, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot show the beauty or the pride aspect of the Battle of ADWA and ignore, completely hide the other reality of shame from Black people. Okay, so my consideration here is the Black people around the world have been cheated. They've been told incomplete story. They've been agitated to be proud of a history that also shames the Black people. Black people were selectively punished in the Battle of ADWA, while white colonizers were respected and sent home safe. Ladies and gentlemen, how does this grab killings and different ways of killings, rapes? Ethiopians are killing each other in extremely brutal manners. We have heard so many brutal ways of killing people, chopping people sometimes. Can I say then this is probably a tradition that transferred through the years? What we saw in ADWA, the way they amputated, the way they dismembered black people like forced by white people. Okay, forget about it. As traitors, traitor about what? But chopping people like that, and they're still doing it in Ethiopia. Do you think it's a cultural norm that transferred from all these years down to the time right now in history? I just wonder. How come Ethiopians kill each other in such a fashion in 21st century for tribal reasons? For whatever reason it is, it just surprises me. Is it a habit, cultural habit? Is it traditional? Orders are transferred to the society, to today's society, way back from that era of savagery, brutality, ignorance. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Why did Ethiopians continue to do this kind of thing to each other? Why are they doing it right now? Was this kind of punishment normal to Ethiopians at that time? If it was not normal, they wouldn't have done it anyway. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, to my understanding, a lot of things have changed since ADWA War was told as such. The incomplete nature of the story has agitated black people only to see the priding aspect of the whole thing, the whole picture. The Rastafarian movement wouldn't have come to this level of recognition, to this level of admiration, to this level of basing its mentality, its revolutionary mentality on the Battle of ADWA. Oh, man. You understand? Wouldn't have come to my understanding. Many people wouldn't have consolidated or wouldn't have flourished their pride from this story that has been told only partially to feed the Ethiopian psychology. Feed only the Ethiopians. Ethiopians are ashamed of this story. They don't even tell their people. They cannot tell their kids. They're not telling their kids. They're not telling the world about the story. They're not putting the story in the museums. Therefore, don't you think history of ADWA also concerns the Eritreans for us to worry about this and to tell the world what happened to us at that time and what this means to black people? Is this black people's pride or shame? Let ADWA story be told in all museums. The Ethiopians missed this part of the story in their museums, in their books, so the Eritreans will tell their stories. I'm trying my best to bring this into awareness because knowledge is power, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to improve a lot of things in Eritrea, especially the museum. This story has to be told in the museum. It is missing in the museum. All these stories should be registered. I'm sure more details are available in Italia, which anybody who wants to do some work on this for PhD thesis, the untold story. Many people can write stories here. I mean, thesis, dissertations, to introduce the history to the world and to reintroduce the story to black people and let them check about their pride or their dignity whatsoever. It was unknown. Many black people can be shocked about this experience, but this is what happened. Now you can figure out if this makes you proud or makes you ashamed of it. Probably the battle signifies pride and shame to black people. The pride being beating the white people with that kind of intensity and national momentum at that point in African colonial history. But the shame, Ethiopian leaders did this to only black people, to the people who came there first to fight, to their own brothers, black brothers, African brothers, leaving the colonial armies that crossed so many seas and so many countries away from Europe. Okay, they were safe. They were safe. So my conclusion is the Ethiopians cannot swallow this, but I do believe that the mentality of the leaders at that time must have been inferior. They must have felt inferior to the whites. To give this kind of prestige, this kind of respect to the white prisoners of war, probably to show them how much they respect them, they had to kill all black people. They had to slaughter them. They had to dismember them as such in a brutal fashion. So we Eritreans have this history behind Battle of ADWA. I will come back next time and discuss things that haven't been told. There are so many stories that have been told. A lot of Eritrean history have been stolen by Ethiopians. You understand? But it's time for Eritreans, now that they have defended their country, consolidated their nation, now it's time to introduce their history to the world. Therefore, the Battle of ADWA, the image is so beautiful, but in the background, a lot of shame. Ladies and gentlemen, I had consider myself lucky to get this chance to come here and to show you what this is all about. Figure it out. In whatever way it touches you, it's up to you. But to me, the Ethiopians at that time dignified the black people's pride, whatever it is, by defeating the colonial army, the white colonial, but they shamed the black people by also killing the victims of that colonialism, the Eritreans, who were forced to come there and participated by force. They were conscripted into the Italian army by force. It was not Eritrea that beat Ethiopians, it was the Italians, but they did that to their own brothers. And this story has to be told, ladies and gentlemen. I'll let you go. I'll let you go. But I encourage a lot of students, younger students, to concentrate on this also and tell the people of the world exactly what happened. This would be a very good subject for PhD thesis. I do believe so. I love you all. Don't forget to support the channel by liking and subscribing, because we are destined to tell the truth right here and now. And I love you.
Ambora,